So,
Right, we're live.
anyway,
We might be live, but we should get rid of fun and games to make the phone work
Just go a bit slower.
in a way that doesn't interrupt the meeting. Right, good evening, councillors. Welcome to tonight's planning committee meeting. First item on the agenda, as ever, is apologies for absence. We do have apologies from Councillor Jones.
Yeah.
Do we accept those apologies?
Yeah.
Representations from interested parties.
They were coming, but they're not.
Right. Are they going to come again?
Yes, they said they'll try and arrange it for October or November.
Right. Watch this space. Declarations of interest. Any disclosable pecuniary interests?
are we discussing the, I don't know if it is, I used to live in the house that used to be the,
Chatham thing.
As long as you don't retain any financial interest in it, I don't
Absolutely
think
not.
that disqualifies you in any way.
no, I just thought I'd mention that.
So no disclosable interests. Any other interests? Minutes of the previous meeting, that's the meeting we held on Tuesday the 1st of August. Present with myself, Councillor Arnold, Councillor Chester and Councillor Shura. Those minutes have been circulated. Have anyone proposed those for me?
Yeah.
Councillor Chester, seconded by Councillor Arnold, just reaches the punch. All those in favour?
Here we go.
So, there are the minutes to be signed. Planning applications. We have rather fewer planning applications on the agenda than we have everything else. So, joys in store. Now, the first matter on our agenda is 7 New Bold Close, a single-story vehicle design extension, which you'll find is item 2 on my written report, on the basis that when I put it together, looking under angle, I saw that NNC included the old station house, which is technically actually. So I did look at the application, I did write something about it. It's not technically on our parish, that doesn't stop us commenting on it. Having said that, anybody has probably looked at it, but I wouldn't have thought that the erection of the summer house is likely to cause anybody any great issues. I think it's far enough away from this building that the conservation officer would be concerned. So, moving on to 7 New Bold Close, single-story rear kitchen and dining room extension. The extension would have a pitched roof, tiles to match the existing, but with 3 roof lights fitted in line with the windows and the French doors, as we've seen in it. Walls would be of brick to match the existing, windows and doors double glazed white PVC frames, so in line with the existing windows and doors. No change to the nature of the number of windows. The doors too are essentially the same. We've got to read out the dimensions I put down in that plan. But if you look at that, you'll see on the top, as it now is, and on the bottom right, as it would be. So essentially, it's a full width extension with a sloping roof with those 3 roof lights. And similar windows and doors, but everyone just pushed it back. Certainly when I looked, I raised no observations or objections, and I haven't seen any other comments. From the public.
No public comments.
Anything else? Nature development. Not really very too exciting. spacious space. I think I did see that when I made issues. Transport having issues. I have to say, it looks to me about one of the least controversial extensions I've seen. Any obvious reason to object to it. Is anybody happy with it?
Just one thing, does the glass at that one end, so is that glass at both ends?
Yeah.
Does the glass at one side go over into the garden of the house next door? That's my only, look at the design and access statement. It just looks like, does that, it isn't the way that glass is going to come down, whether they could see.
I would have thought, but I must admit, it's just the impression I've
Yeah.
got, is that the height of those windows,
Might be so
you'd
high.
actually have to be standing on the soapbox or something to look out of
Okay,
or a ladder or something in order to overlook.
that was my only observation from the drawing.
Oh, they haven't objected.
Oh, well,
You
okay.
don't see it as
Fire on the front door.
Yeah, I was just thinking light, so if you have got anything like curved lights up there,
Well, it's
that's
better
then
than,
lit, whereas at the moment it's not lit. But as soon as you put the light in there, that's gonna light there, probably into there. I'm not sure, when you look at, if you go back to the map, if you look at you see where the side will be. Well, yeah, that's it. So if that's not if that's just a flat wall, which we can't really see whether it is or not, is there a photograph of?
As it is currently.
I think it's
It's
just flat.
I don't-
One of
I
those.
think it's just a brick, basically, I think it's a brick wall.
I think it is, yeah, I've got it on here now, you can't quite see it, but I think it just goes onto the corner.
they need the
Corner of the
lights,
house.
it seems to me.
It's all right.
Okay, I'm comfortable, that was just a window.
Get a distinct impression that's no objection. Looking at that from the road,
Okay.
right. Here in a slightly different order to the order on my list. So 58 Blackthorn Road is actually the last one on my list. Proposed new garage, an extension to the south side to replace the existing attached garage, the bedroom extension over, new garden room to the rear, replacing the existing sunroom and lean-to, and the covered stall to the northeast side to be removed. Described as a re-application, previous application was refused, although we didn't object. The refusal by NMC was on this basis, that the cumulative impact of the proposed side extensions would result in a bulk and scale that would make the property unduly dominating in the street scene and out of proportion to its original style, dimensions and footprint, exacerbated by the property's prominent position. Side elevations would result in incongruous additions to the front elevations of the host dwelling that would dominate and disrupt the established character of the host dwelling in the immediate area. I find that quite interesting because we have on occasions objected on very similar grounds. I can think of two properties close to my former home in St Peter's Road where we made very similar points, which NMC didn't pick up on at all, and yet this one, to which we didn't really see a problem, they didn't like it at all.
Well, maybe
So-
they do.
Well, maybe they're finally catching up. This particular application I've described as being scaled back from the original one on the basis that one side extension to the north is no longer included. So on the left-hand side as you view it from the road. With the existing flat-roofed former garage building to remain, with its brick rendered to match the proposed extension. The extension on the right-hand side, the south, will have a double garage at ground floor level with wide double doors, a slate tile canopy roof to match the existing, and over the garage at first floor level, a bedroom extension with a composite slate tile roof to match the roof of the existing dwelling with weathered red ridge tiles. There will be a black fascia and rain winter goods. New face work to be through tone render finish, and in cream colour to match the existing. Front external corners to be red brick coin details to match the existing. And the rear east elevation brickwork would also have a similar render finish in cream. The new garden room would have a slate tile roof to match the existing, with 4 roof lights and windows and completed doors and windows to match. Highways are not objected, but a couple of usual observations requiring visibility displays, access requirements and the like. And there were at that time no other objections and reported. What strikes me is that it's marginally difficult, having not objected to the original plan, to see a smaller version of that plan than before. We suddenly then turned around and found a reason to object. I'm not saying we can't, but I think we have to have a pretty good reason for doing so. I must admit, looking at it, I couldn't see anything obvious. And so you would put up, you see some sort of elevations and things.
That's the existing.
We have to turn that in order to bring that around. So there's the existing frontage. There you can see at the back the sort of conservatory stroke leading to look to the thing. And so fix that in your mind and then look at what's proposed.
Oh,
So
Better.
now we have on the extreme left, where previously in the application that was refused, there was a first floor extension over that bit to the side of the flat roof. That's now gone.
Yeah.
And then you can see you've got a sort of porch area with the pitched roof coming out over the new double garage, and then a bedroom extension at the top.
So that's an improvement.
Nothing.
Yeah, tidy that.
I mean, yes, it makes it
Very
quite
tidy.
a modern and
Yeah.
Much better.
clearly
Look what it looks like in the photo.
an improved property, and less dramatic than had been proposed.
We could almost say,
That might be going a little far.
Yes.
But I'm assuming that therefore is an objection again.
There's no overlooking, it's overlooking the car park that's drawn in this basically.
Yeah.
So,
So, that brings us to 81A West Street. So this is it's the third one on your sheet that I've prepared. And it's described as a partial demolition and attic extension to an existing storage and office structure within the curtilage of a dwelling house to become a new dwelling. Interesting history. Properties within the conservation area, currently partly residential, partially shop premises. And back in 2019, there was an application made, granted in April 2020, but not implemented, to convert to a semi-detached 3-storey 5-bed dwelling and a 5-bed masonette of shop in its circuit. So quite a significant scheme, and that did get planning permission. But essentially, they say in their paperwork that, amongst other things, COVID rather spiked their guns in terms of trying to progress it, so they didn't. So they've had to put in a reapplication. And if I use the term scaled back for the previous one, I think it would perhaps say something similar. This one would have a total residential area. So the previous one had a total residential area of 483 square metres. Now we did object to that original application, so this is the reverse of the previous situation. We felt that it would have an adverse effect on the conservation area. We thought that parking was inadequate, bearing in mind the scale of this thing, and that there would be traffic and safety issues due to ingress and egress. ingress, egress. It's quite small scale, but you can see that it is more or less opposite the Jesus Church. We're talking about kitchen, shop, and premises that stretch behind, and there is an access road on the left-hand side. This application is described as being smaller in scale. The residential area will now be 394, so about 90 square metres less than the previous one. It mixed using the existing piling, but with 4 roof heights to be included. Ridge height of the pitch roof would be 7700, eaves height 3800. Walls, natural untreated timber cladding, cedar, as opposed to the fake stone-working concrete that it currently has. Windows and doors, powder coated metal in dark grey, as opposed to the existing white UPVC windows and painted timber doors. This new property will have 2 bedrooms and a single parking space. Now, if we move on and get up and point a few things out on this. Now then, if we can see the existing elevations, and which way you have to go through them. So just go through them 3 and see what you can use. Right. So that is described as an existing elevation. It's not the most helpful of line drawings. We go on to the next one. And there we see it from the other side. Again, we see certain features, if I put it that way. And thirdly, that. Right, you might say that that's not particularly helpful. Let's look at the new elevations. I think, if you go up there, so there are 3 proposed elevations. So now we get a slightly better picture of the thing. First of all, you'll note the timber cladding effect, which is pretty pronounced. And we've got like a flight of steps up. It is slightly difficult from this, it seems to me, to ascertain whether there is any kind of an overlooking issue from the top of the stairs. I recall we've had issues with that before. There's a window that seems to be at quite a height there, and then a window there which seems to be very low. But again, it's slightly difficult to work out because of what appears to be the ground level. And then 2 roof lights and the chimney. Go to the east elevation, which is the second of those 3. So there's the east elevation. So matching side to the roof, but a different treatment on the side. And if we look at the final elevation, so now we see that, and we can see a little figure, as it were, stood there. Now, if you could move next to, was it the location plan you had up before?
I think so.
That was shows.
Yeah.
That's not desperately helpful.
No.
Good.
What I wanted to look at.
Is if you go to the design access statement on page 8,
That, yes,
that's the one.
if you go to that,
Then
you will
on
find,
page 8, you find that
it's a bit more helpful.
It's trying to sort of picture in what it will look like from the side.
Yeah.
And from the back, there you go,
So,
bit further, page 8. Next one. There you
so
go.
this is the
That's what
proposal,
it would actually look like.
and this is what it looks like. Now, it is very tucked away. I know they say reflects materials used within the Amble Conservation Area. I am marginally struggling to think of other buildings that are that timber cladding.
There's one
Are
on
you
there,
trying to
actually.
make it look like a barn?
There's one on page 9, I think, that they're trying to
All
say
that
what
wood,
looks like
That's
bigger.
sort of barny,
Ah, right.
garden sheddy.
Yeah,
I have to say, I'm not quite. Somebody else might work out where that is. I'm struggling to think where.
yeah, it's not working out.
Is it from Amber?
It is
Yeah.
said to be a timber cladding building within the Amble
Isn't
Conservation
that,
Area.
isn't that the road off, isn't that down past the, off the car park at Tollbrook? Those properties opposite.
Oh, could be, yes. Could be.
Yeah.
I thought they were lighter than that though. I thought they were like,
I think if you go back, there is somewhere on this document.
oh, on this
Sorry,
document,
say
yeah.
it on that.
It's still not quite clear.
There is, just working my way through it, I think there is somewhere where it shows a car.
A car?
A little line drawing of a parked car, but it's, no, it's not that. No, it's none of those, isn't it? Go back to that list again, because I'm seeing it. I think it's that.
I mean, where the car
I
park.
don't know whether it says it's under the parking survey. There is literally a line drawing that shows the car in a narrow space.
Oh, we've seen
It's on
that.
the
That's
elevation.
it.
We've seen that. That's one of your elevations.
It's on the elevation,
Was it on the elevation?
it's on the proposed elevation.
There it is, it's, yeah,
Where?
it's got a red boundary in the car.
Yeah.
Trying to think
Can you work out which of those three it was?
what the reference. It's the proposed elevation,
Yeah, which one?
not that one, it's the one looking down. Floor plan, it's a plan, I'm sure.
Go back to the floor.
It's a
Maybe
plan.
that's it.
Sorry,
It's the plan.
It's a floor
Proposed
plan.
plan.
Proposed.
Floor up the top. Up,
Yeah,
well, that's,
Thank you.
another one.
it's a lot of effort to get there, but there is a very small area with a single car. It would presumably come out and disappear, that would it?
Thank you.
It's not Pedley's place, is it?
Clearly, it's
Yeah.
Headless is behind it.
Yeah, it's behind.
it's a significantly smaller project than the one which got permission before. There is only a single parking space, but that is within highways requirements for a two-bed property. It does, of course, discharge out onto the road that, if you like, links West Street and Benefit Road. And we were a bit concerned about that. But when all said and done, it appears to be a single vehicle.
It's a single vehicle, and then you've got Pedley's one, who drives it.
And I suppose the question is, do we continue to feel that what is proposed would have an adverse impact on the conservation area, given that it appears to be somewhat scaled back?
And it's
Personally, I would have felt somewhat happier if it wasn't constructed out of the timber cladding, because I think it would look more in keeping if it had a Bradstone type finish or something like that, not necessarily proper stone, but something that has a stone appearance. I think it would be more in keeping. But that's perhaps a personal preference.
And it's behind, isn't it? It's behind, you're not going to see it from the street view.
You won't see.
You have to make an effort to go and see it.
Yeah,
So in that respect,
you
Would
would.
perhaps catch a glimpse, maybe, I don't know, from the bottom.
And the bit that you're actually going to see, if you peer down the lane, isn't going to change very much.
No.
I mean, the building that's there is hideously ugly, I have to say.
Yes. I'm not going to argue with
Sure
you.
with that.
And so, you know, any improvement at one level, I think, is to
it's
be.
going to be commended.
You see, that's what you see currently.
Yeah.
And that's not going to change very much, as far as I can tell. because it's very difficult to see that end elevation. You have to walk up the lane and then view it looking the other way. You see that elevation, that's not going to change very much at all.
No.
Yeah. The height of it,
That's hand, I think, isn't it?
it's a bit difficult to tell.
Well, there's
It
a clause that
is-
says on there, on that writing, does it say the existing height on that, right-hand drawing?
This one.
On that one, so it's written, like, to above the roof line, it says something there.
Mm.
It's slightly higher, isn't it?
I think it is slightly higher than
Wasn't that so?
currently. I guess the question then would be, does it sort of poke out and look rather incongruous?
Oh,
Oh, it's on it now, look.
I think we're looking for, I don't know, I think it's okay.
I can't see what.
Then
I think that arrow, that to the top,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
existing
there
roof,
is
it's
something
slightly
there.
higher.
Oh, there, I think
There you
so.
go.
It's the,
It's slightly
it's
higher
a
on the
line
pitch.
that's just inside.
Yeah, it's slightly higher on the pitch, and that's
So the pitch
for
will
the rest of it.
be a steeper pitch, won't it?
But it's not going to go any higher than what's, the front building.
I think it's hidden, it's behind. You have to go and walk to it to see.
I'm not convinced that drawing does it justice either.
No, it's
No, I think you're right. See what they're trying to achieve.
Because it doesn't look anything like that other photograph they showed of a cladding building
Mm.
somewhere else in the conservation area that we can.
It's not listed itself, is it?
That one.
Yeah, it doesn't, I mean, it doesn't look like that, does it?
No.
And if they were to do it like that, then that would be quite charming. Well, better anyway. Certainly better than what's there at the moment.
That certainly sounds to me that the voices that are speaking are not people who are objecting to this on any of the grounds that we had with the previous application.
Yeah.
Which, as I said, was larger in scale.
And there is one advantage to it perhaps, Chair, and that is that it will provide a relatively small two-bedroom property. And, you know, we, as a town, we lack properties of that size in the central area.
Fair point.
Then providing a smaller property rather than a larger one.
With one car.
With one small car.
Yeah.
Well, but there's no parking for 81, there's no parking at all, no.
No.
It's creating an additional parking space that isn't otherwise there.
So there are some benefits. In fact, I have no objection to it.
I'm not hearing any basis to object to this. So,
I think we're okay.
okay. So we'll say no objection to that. The next item on our agenda is then purely for information purposes, because it's to do with the application in respect of the Barclays plan. Various conditions were attached to the permission, and essentially they seem to manage to fulfil something. Councillors will note, as we leave the current plan application, that permission has been given for the redevelopment of Piccardie. Indeed, anybody who's driven past it would be hard pushed not to have realised that due to the very large signs
Sales
that are erected all over the premises, advertising it as a site, if you like, with development potential and planning permission granted. So we wait to see when somebody applies if and actually starts work on that project. That's what you may recall we probably agonised over for quite a long time, and eventually, I think it was something like the fourth time of asking, decided that it had broadly met our concerns, and we decided not to propose it. You'll note that we had opposed an application with respect to the Colchester development, but that one was granted. And I think that takes us through the applications themselves. What is slightly unusual is that we have 4 other matters on the agenda, including any other relevant matters for report only, for which there is at least something there. But Lisa has been terribly busy, or at least she's been kept terribly busy by members of the public largely, who have been getting in touch with the council and expressing concern about developments that they have seen. Starting with this one, the wooden riverside structure built along the Neenway Oldham, which appears to be being used residentially. And so far as we can tell, has been erected without any kind of planning permission. I venture to suggest that if that application had come before us, we might have been extraordinarily sceptical about granting planning permission for anything residential in that location. Lisa, I don't know if there's anything you want to kind of add, because we're going to try and decide on things. Jamie,
Can I mean, I'm sure we'll come on to this probably, but what's the legal standpoint in terms of building something on the water?
well, I mean, I think it's not so much building it, as you say, in that specific location. That's a more fundamental point, is that if it's been constructed without planning permission at all, it shouldn't be there. Whether if an application for retrospective permission were granted, were made, it would be granted by NNC as another matter. I don't think we should speculate about that specifically. The question is, do we as a council push NNC and ask them to do anything? Lisa, I don't know, is there any sort of additional information or update?
No, because it's unclear really. Initially, when I looked at it, I thought it must be the owner of the field behind it, but it is actually built on the water from the looks of it, with like a jetty onto the land. That picture there was a van there, and because of the tracks there, I'm assuming that's where the access is. So the person has been coming via this field. But Sue hasn't said anything about the person. She put in her email, due to the complex nature of what he wants to do, and she's not said he's the owner of the field or anything. And the policies involved, I asked him to submit an application for pre-application advice, which he did straight away. Once I get the officer's response, we can progress the matter further. I think some of his proposal may be acceptable, but not all of it. That's all she said.
Can I just clarify, which side of the river is it?
It's on this field
Shows
side.
that.
Yeah, this where I took the picture was on this Armston Road between Armston and Ashton. So I pulled up about here, which is where I'd seen it the first time coming back from Barmouth. Just other side of the river. Yeah.
So you've taken it from the non-Arundel side?
Yeah.
David? So, Councillor Collins, we've got to be very careful. I think we've got to stand, because people are going to start putting things everywhere if we're not careful. So my view is we need to have a chat or whatever it is you do and say that what you're trying to do it properly, come through the steps that we offer, but we're not just going to let you do it without any sort of, checking or anything like that.
Councillor Arnold and Councillor Shaw.
This might be a really stupid question, but is there different laws to how something is built?
On the river.
Yeah, if you like.
Well, it was the Environment Agency that flagged it initially, and this building's has been being built for quite some time.
Right.
because I saw it ages ago, and I just thought it was a shed. I just thought it was the landowner's shed that he put, I don't know, ride on lawnmower or something, I don't know. But then it became more and more clear each time we saw it that because I think there's solar panels on it and everything, it looked like somebody was going to live there. And then of course, obviously now, people are reporting that it does look like somebody's living there. But I don't know, I mean, if it's agricultural land, you're not supposed to build on it anyway, so even if it's the
You can
owner
build an agricultural
building.
building without planning permission, but that does not look like an
It's not
agricultural building.
No,
It looks like a property being occupied residentially. Now, it's interesting because there's some sort of reference there to pre-application, this, that and the other. That seemed to me, however, to be sort of slightly backwards. The thing's already there and it shouldn't be there at all. What should have happened is that he should have put in a pre-application saying, this is what I'd like to do. What help and guidance can you give me, or are you going to tell me that there's no way that's going to get approval? And then we'd have gone from there, but instead he just seemed to put it up first and then almost saying, do something about it if you can. That's a sure thing,
Yeah, it might be worthwhile if we haven't already to consult the rural authority, because I think the bigger issue is whether they have mooring rights. The point is they may have no right to moor there, in which case they just simply can't keep it there.
It can't be static.
That's a good, yeah,
It can't be
that's a
static.
good question.
It's got to float on.
I'm entirely sure which body would be responsible for that.
Who looks after the name?
I'm not sure.
Because the point is you can't just moor anywhere you like on a river,
No.
you have to
Yeah.
have mooring rights.
That's undoubtedly true, even if the landowner goes on. It's not clear that this is necessarily even there with the landowner. We would assume the landowner must, at the very least, be aware of what's going on.
if it's
Presumably acquiescing.
But the landowner doesn't necessarily have mooring rights.
No, it doesn't necessarily. That's a day.
I think for me, I think we just refer it to NNC enforcement, planning enforcement, and let them look at it.
No.
Because at the end of the day, let them pick the bones out of the land, the water, and everything else. We believe it's a breach of planning law to just erect a building, whether it's on a river or it's on a piece of land. It hasn't got planning permission, so it should be a planning enforcement to look at it. That's
I just had a wizard idea for me, if I want to downsize.
I was going to go and
I
buy
was
it.
going to buy it, yeah.
You could go,
just go to the side,
walking
go
over
build
next
one.
door.
I was just thinking, my friend Philip Rosey owns a field in front of me, and therefore the riverbank. I'm sure he would let me build a house down there. I mean, anybody could do it if it was permissible.
But it's
Yes, I mean,
It has to be a planning.
clearly,
There's no mooring rights.
I have to say, I agree with Councillor Davis, and it raises all sorts of issues. But it seems to me that the role of this council in this
We don't
situation
have
is to go to
Yeah, and
enforcement and say, we've become aware of this, it doesn't appear to be right. Over to you.
Yeah.
And then they can pursue it. And if a proper planning application made retrospectively emerges, so be it. And actually, technically, is that actually in our paragraph?
I think
It
it's
probably is.
The boundary is down the middle of the river, so yes, it
It
is.
is.
I was just going to ask, probably you two, really. Have you ever experienced anything like that before? Ever?
Personally, I don't recall ever seeing anything quite like this.
It's
37 years on the council, but no.
Yeah, that one's from now.
Yeah.
Pretty
but
much.
even if it got planning permission, we would probably still object.
Well, if it was an application, I have a feeling we
Yeah.
probably would, but I don't want to prejudge an application that isn't before us.
No.
Right, well, I think the consensus is let's invite enforcement to deal with the matter. Which brings us on to a structure in the garden of 1662 West Street. This was drawn to our attention by a parishioner who asked me to go and look at it. After last night's meeting here, I had a wander down the street and went and took a look at it. I think we have some photographs which will undoubtedly assist. So,
Yeah.
if you can envisage that, you've got the Style Theatre, and if you were looking at the Style Theatre, across the road, there's number 62.
Oh, yeah.
Between number 62 and the other property, as it were, on the left of that plan, there is a roadway, which is described as West Street News. And there are properties built around the back.
Yes, there are.
And where that little red square is, somebody has constructed a building. Not only have they constructed it, but they're certainly using it, because when I went and looked at it last night, there was a gentleman in there, who happened to be looking in the opposite direction, so he didn't see me, but certainly saw him. Who sat down quite happily in there, doing something. It does strike me that a structure of that nature, detached as it is from the property, there it is. Again, perhaps a little easier.
Yeah, so which is
to talk about it. So, the roadway, if you like, has come round here, comes round here, and there's parking area here, and sort of here there are other properties. But in the garden area of presumably that property, there is this structure, which, as you can see, is also at quite a height. And the parishioner queries the fact it's there at all, and also drew our attention to the fact, and it's quite difficult to see in the picture, but you can just, that row of bricks there is of a wholly different colour. They're a much lighter brick. Stone, where than this wall here, or indeed the wall on which it sits. And this wall divides this property from the adjoining one to its right-hand side. I'm not clear whose wall it is. I'm not clear who put it there. My guess would be, it is no more than a guess, that it's probably the occupant of the structure pushing the wall up higher so people can't look into the structure that he's now creating. Which begs two questions. One, should that wall have been interfered with in that way at all? From a planning perspective.
Oh, here's the other picture. Sorry, I couldn't find the other pictures. These are a few more.
I mean, it's like it's a sort of garden roomy type thing,
Yes.
detached entirely from the main structure of the property. But extremely prominent, looks out over into this car park area, and in practical terms, if you looked out of those windows, you would be looking straight across at the properties on the other side.
It's not private.
It certainly hasn't sought any kind of permission to be there. And I can't help but look at that and say it should be done.
I mean, it's in the conservation area.
It's also inside the conservation area. I don't think the property itself is listed, or I must admit I forgot to check that.
I think it probably will be.
It might even be inside the curtilage of a listed property, I'm not sure.
It's
We
West
need to check that.
Most of West Street is,
But
yeah.
it could well be, usually, quite often in that area, part of the group. Even if it wasn't in a listed building, it is in the conservation area and it is constructed without permission, and it does seem to be a similar situation to the one we just looked at.
Is it a man cave, you think?
It is.
Well, yes, I think so. It was certainly a male that was sitting in there
Yeah.
last night.
It is listed.
So
It
there's,
is listed. So, even more concerning, arguably. I think Councillor Davies was
Yeah.
first in Councillor.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, Lisa, Chair, which is, it's similar in terms, it's probably a height issue. It goes higher than where it should be in relation to the, if it's in a conservation area. Again, it's a planning enforcement issue, I think we refer it to them, give them something to.
And the will.
Or we can ask them to take a look at that, what's been done to the wall as well.
But I do like the cricket children.
Yeah, so my question is, just probably more of a technical question, is, I mean, I assume people can put sheds in their gardens without planning permission, right?
Still got height.
If it's
You can
a
certainly put
certain
it-
size,
Yeah,
and height.
provided
Okay, so
within certain dimensions.
Right, okay. So is this more the wall issue than necessarily the shed issue?
Well, I think the trouble is, it's not really a shed. I mean, it's quite clearly used as a room, not a shed. Looking at it, I mean, I couldn't, in the circumstances, go and try and peer through the windows in any event. As you can see, it's not actually that straightforward. Because it's not a bit
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Councillor Chester and Councillor.
There is precedence here because we have also had people wanting to put changing rooms or whatever you might like to call them on West Street with when they've put pools in and
Or as a backup, yeah.
there is precedence. There are rules about what, how big and
And we
high
looked
and
at size
everything
then.
else that you can put, you know.
The last one we looked at like that was the, I think it's 38 West Street. It was the
Last year.
last year.
Yeah, the
They did all sorts
that's
of
what I
work
was
to that
Yeah.
property,
And that was a height.
and there is,
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
there was these changing rooms and all the rest.
Well, there are rules about it
There are.
that they have to comply.
Councillor.
Yeah, I mean, it's a substantial shed. So I think it would have been a bit more subtle. But even then, it's in the conservation zone. And I think it's something that we've already decided what we're going to do, but I think it's too much. And the wall is definitely a big issue, but they should have got permission for that. And the builder should have told them to, whoever did it.
Well, it's the sort of work that might have been carried out by somebody doing it themselves, I would have said. I have no idea.
DIY.
It could have been.
Mm.
Whatever, this appears to be our second one that we want to report to planning
Yes, I
enforcement.
think so.
Um,
And
something
got
we
names.
tend to end up doing that often, but to get two in the space of a single meeting is quite
Well,
unusual.
we don't finish.
The third one is yet another issue. This is 39B West Street,
Oh,
and somebody has put in UPVC windows in it.
is
I
that
can't remember the number off the top of my head. I should.
39B.
39B?
No, I wasn't thinking of this
Oh.
one.
How many windows?
But recently there was an application
Yes, there was.
by somebody on West Street
Mhm.
about windows that we didn't like. ENC
Yeah, it was.
turned down, went to appeal, and it was refused. And here we are, it's another property in West Street. And admittedly, I think it's slightly different because that is not the frontage to West Street. Whereas the other property, we were talking about frontage to West Street.
It's an old barn.
It's not listed either.
No, it's an old barn.
It isn't a listed building, and it might be therefore that it doesn't require any particular permission. But it is in the conservation area, of course. Now, what occurs to me is that this is probably not a matter for planning enforcement, but it might be a matter to refer to the conservation officer and say, this is happening inside the conservation area, and it's been drawn to our attention. Certainly no applications have been forthcoming about it, it's just been done. If you've got a problem with it and you have powers to do something about it, then over to you. Does that seem
I think
a
that's the
sensible
time.
approach?
I'm happy with that. At least we've had it checked.
Yeah,
I mean, it does suffer from a lot of damage.
It might also be worth observing at this point that depending on the outcome of the three things that we've just done, if it results in action being taken by NMC, this would be something that we could advertise
Oh, yes,
through our town council sites
yes.
and say the planning committee is vigilant and people are not going to get away with doing things without planning permission, doing it without required listed building consents, doing inappropriate things in conservation areas, etc. So I think we need to see what the outcome of these is, and if it becomes appropriate to do so, to make a bit of a hue and cry about it.
No, put in the newsletter as well.
Absolutely. On a slightly different note, and I'm gradually working my way through these things, there was an application, somewhere in all of this, I've got the paperwork.
I'll be able to get it up on the screen, David, I think.
Yeah, no. Oh dear.
Is this, who's this, Susan?
Yeah, this is it. This is it. Susie Russell, this one.
I can't remember the property address off the top of my head, but it was an application which involved, it was quite a complicated application, it involved an extension to a property in West Street again, I think. And we were concerned because of an intention not to use Collie Weston Street. And we put in an objection. Now, in fact, it's been drawn to our attention by the planning authority that actually we rather misunderstood the position. There are two separate applications, one of which is in connection with an issue to do with whether a Collie Weston slate roof can be changed to a blue slate roof. This will correct me if I go wrong here. And that we've objected to. But the other application, which we, I think, kind of bracketed together but wrongly, involved an existing planning permission with conditions. The conditions on that one required a certain type of non-Collie Weston roof. And they wanted to change from that to a different type of non-Collie Weston roof. I think we then got confused and thought, it's not a Collie Weston roof, this isn't good enough. But actually, we missed the point. Once we put in our objection, we were immediately contacted by NNC, and Lisa then got on to me, and I took one look at it and thought, we're not going to wait for the matter to come back to council for us to change our decision. I just took a unilateral decision to go back to NNC, say, look, you're right, we made a mistake, we misunderstood.
Yeah. Please
withdraw that objection, but not our objection to the fundamental Collie Weston roof point. Where, if I remember rightly, her comment was that she thought we were probably on the right side of that one.
Yeah, she's recommending refusal
She's
anyway.
recommending refusal of an application which would involve a non-Collie Weston roof where there ought to be one. So a bit complicated, we got there in the
It
end.
sounded to us as if it was a slight way of getting the whole thing to be new slate.
It did, and we just misunderstood.
I remember it.
That brings us, please, to any other relevant matters to report. Due to a slight mix-up, because Lisa was on holiday, I liaised with Emma, and I asked Emma to tell Lisa to put something on the agenda, which I don't think actually happened, because it isn't on the agenda. But I circulated a précis about the inspector's final report from the local plan part 2. Having gone through it and, as it were, looked at the things that were of relevance to Oundle within it. But as it's on the basis of a relevant matter for report only, and I'm not asking this committee to make any decisions on anything, I'm merely updating you. If you haven't looked at the inspector's final report, and of course, as always with these things, it's quite a significant document, well, it's not as long as I fear it might be. Although the additional document with his modifications is a very long document, and mostly it applies to places that are of no concern to us. But as I said, within it, there are a number of paragraphs, and I went through those and I provided a little bit of a bracing. So paragraph 57, I think, does bear talking about for a minute, or at least mentioning. It says in the inspector's report that there was a shortfall of 239 dwellings against the Joint Core Strategy target of 645 dwellings, which, it said, would be met through 70 dwellings on the Ashton Road at Herne Road Development Phase 2. I'll come back to that in a minute. Which is allocated in the Rural Northampton and Thrapston plan. The proposed site allocations in the local plan, St Christopher's Drive at Crosstock Road and Stoke Doyle Road, and brownfield sites. Since the base date of the 1st of April 2020, of the 3 sites allocated in Local Plan Part 2, 2 of them, as you know, have got full planning permission, and 1 is principally built as we speak, possibly not now. So 130 dwellings at Colchester Road, 130 dwellings including the 65 extra care unit at St Christopher's Drive. Even my maths would take 130 times 2 is 260. I would remind you the shortfall in dwellings was 239. It says in the inspector's report, with these site allocations, the target will be exceeded by 189 dwellings. And I quote, overall, there will be a slight oversupply in Oundle of 189 dwellings. I don't know about you, but I would not describe 189 dwellings as slight.
No.
And I don't know how an inspector could come to that conclusion. But this is wrong on so many levels. For example, he's incorporated into that the 70 dwellings on phase 2 of the Ashton Road, Herne Road site, which is in multiple ownership and has not come forward and shows no sign of coming forward. I know it's a fatal thing to say, because we were saying that about Dairy Farm, Stoke Doyle Road until recently, and then that application came before us, albeit not the 20 that is in our GP, but 9. But there you go. To the inspector, it seems that 189 dwelling oversupply is only about 10. We said as one. You will recall that we were extremely critical of the site assessments undertaken by ENC in the first place and NMC as they took it over. However, the inspector considers that the council has undertaken a thorough site assessment process, clearly identifying the reasons for selecting preferred sites and rejecting others, taking account of potential constraints, infrastructure requirements, and necessary mitigation measures. So consequently, the inspector was satisfied about the methodology for selecting sites in the plan, describing it as logical, justified, and consistent with national policy. I suspect this council will beg to differ. I think former councillor Tony Robinson will definitely beg to differ in connection with St Christopher's Drive site. He then looked at the 3 site-specific sites, and I won't bother to go through the notes specifically. They're all there for anybody who's got a spare hard copy if you want to. So there are certain changes that were made to what is in, or what is going to be in the local plan part two, because the process is the inspector has gone back to NNC in essence and said, I cannot approve your plan as drawn, but if you make all of these modifications to it, it will be acceptable. So NNC are in the process of modifying it in order to meet the inspector's objections. So it will emerge and it will incorporate these things. I don't quite get how, if you've already granted planning permission for a site, you can then have a local plan part two, which says that it is a requirement of the allocation that X, Y, and Z happens, when you haven't made it a planning condition for the planning consent you've already granted. But hey, what do I know? But that seemed to me to be a bit of an issue. Leaving aside housing allocation, there's an area about town, there's a sort of area around town centre boundaries and primary shopping areas relating to the whole patch, but also specifically to Oundle. And there were a number of detailed changes that were sought, but as I put it in the note, of general application, nothing that is sort of Oundle specific. A bit later on though, I specifically wanted to say that paragraphs 195 to 197, the inspector clearly read what we wrote, because the inspector has adopted it almost verbatim to what we were suggesting. For example, we pointed out that if you're going to describe the hinterland of Oundle, it seemed a bit illogical to mention every village, but omit to mention Barnwell. He has now agreed, and that Barnwell is now mentioned. So we've now got a phrase that includes this, which may be interesting for any future parish boundary review. The Oundle built-up area includes parts that are situated within the parishes of Ashton, Elmington and Gladstone Drive, Barnwell, Barnwell Mill, Barnwell Country Park and the Oundle Marina, and Gladthorpe, Old Farm Lane. And of course one might add, and half the development of Cottersville Road is now. The definition of the historic core of Oundle has been revised in line with what we said, because we pointed out that West Street and North Street were kind of connected by the marketplace, and it might be rather logical to describe it thus, linking them a new street, and that's happened. And there's been a bit of a tweak to the wording around main employment areas. Interestingly enough, paragraph 203, talking about possible developments in what might be 200 brownfield sites, reference is made to the East Road employment area, and it has been modified to reflect, as he puts it here, Oundle Town Council's aspiration to retain the East Road Road car park as an asset of the town. May be interesting to see exactly what is said in the new plan about that, and whether that could be used in any way to try to stymie any possible future applications for the redevelopment of that site as something other than a car park. Councillors may recall that ENC justified the developments specifically of the Cotterstock Road site and the Stoke Road site on the grounds that they were identified as sites for future allocation in RNOTP. There is no way that is true, because the wording of what was in RNOTP about them was all very if this, if that, maybe the other. But what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. If it is identified in some way in the local plan that this needs to be retained as an asset for the town, might we be able to argue that the plan therefore effectively dictates that it shouldn't be developed in any other way. It'll be interesting to see. So that's about it, and then there's some specific tweaks around what it says about the riverside as well, and again, I've written it all out. I've brought that to this committee, but it's really for information purposes only, and there's a bit of a possible discussion point going forward. It hasn't been circulated to the entire council, but I suggest that at this point, this committee asks Lisa to circulate it to the rest of the councillors, simply for information on the basis that it was looked at during the course of the citizens' meeting. Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the newsletter coming up, and I mentioned this thing as a possible thing. I mean, it's too big. Is there anything that's worth putting in the newsletter for the next one? Because I thought this was an important thing. It's clarifying other things, but I'm not sure there's much that we can say succinctly in the newsletter.
I think it's quite difficult to put it in a length that would work either angle life or angle advertising. I mean, one could, I suppose, almost as a snippet, say that we made a number of submissions and we're pleased to note that at least certain of them were taken on board in relation to our aspiration to retain them. For example, the car park. We could say that, but I think getting into any other detail is just going to be too complicated to.
So the car park is the key thing.
But that car park point is perhaps the single best one we can make. And I think of all the effort that we put into commenting on the local plan part 2, and what we've got could be boiled down almost to, well, that's one positive that we can draw from it. It's not very encouraging, but it's better than nothing, I suppose.
So that's an asset there. Is it on an asset register?
What's that?
The thing that we've been doing for NCAL with the whole thing about
I would
assets.
imagine that the lease of the car park isn't on our asset
It
register.
should be.
Which car park are you talking about?
The
it's
Longstone car park.
Both.
But all the car parks in essence on assets.
Well, there should be, yeah.
These are
Sure,
public
They'll be on the
spaces.
asset register to
Emma
ensure
was
them.
doing that, and it was a survey. What we put in there was it, that was it, and that became an asset.
Right, yeah,
So I
There should
checked with
be,
them
too.
to see if they, I mean, I'm sure they were.
it must be.
So this was I'm just trying to think succinctly how to say this, an inspector's review of the overall plan, is that?
Yes, I mean, it was the public inspection by the inspector of the planning authority's local plan part 2, which you could say that the inspector has not approved without modifications being made to it, one of which is reflecting the town council's aspirations for the retention of the car park. That's that. Earlier, we put up some paperwork with regard to council-owned land adjacent to
Oh,
32 Sutton Road.
Yes.
Really by way of simply advice to us. I mean, it seems to me that this is really actually a full council matter. I don't think it really sits with us. If it sits with the committee, it sits with the states, and I think it will be looked at by the states later in the month. If the states reach an review, it is that we shouldn't touch it with probably. But I suppose the states will presumably make a recommendation of some description to full council, and we'll probably see it on the agenda in October,
Okay.
as a guess. Lisa, before you went away on holiday, you circulated a sort of a questionnaire type thing, because we were going to have somebody from NNC come to talk to us.
Oh, yeah.
And there was some legal questions on there. Did you get any feedback? recirculate it? Because wasn't the idea that they were going to come next month?
Yes, but I think I circulate the email from Sue Scott saying she can't really make evening meetings because
Oh,
of
yes,
poor
I think-
eyesight.
It was more that if we have questions, we could submit
Email them, yeah.
and they could be answered. Now, I mean, we have raised 2 planning enforcement matters, and 1 reference to the conservation officer in 1 meeting, and we made observations on this document. There are arguably a number of questions that might pop out just of those things alone. So, as they have indicated a willingness to kind of respond to questions, it may be worth us having a good think about, are there any questions that any of us particularly would like to see answered? I know I haven't responded myself yet, because I knew that I've got a little bit more time, basically.
She did also say that if we wanted a virtual meeting, she'd be quite happy to do that.
Well, what we could do is see what we've come up with. We could submit it to her and say, you know, does she want to provide a written response, as it were, in her own time? Or would she like to maybe address the issue in a virtual meeting? We could perhaps tie in with a planning meeting. Could be a special meeting, I suppose, if we couldn't actually tie the but it's something we should, I think, try and do. That covers all the extra matters I want to talk about. Councillor Chester, is there anything else?
No, I know there were a couple of things I said I would bring to the meeting about lights or potholes or something, but I can't remember what they were.
Right.
So I'll bring them to the next time we're all together.
Well, I would have brought to the meeting, as you know, of course, New Road is now partially closed, so everything is being diverted. And it's a bit sort of so-keeper. You could go up New Road and then you could turn along Springfield Road and try and go through the mobile chicanes caused by all the parked cars. And if you manage to reach the top end by Blackpool Road unscathed, you're doing relatively well. You could attempt to go down St Peter's Road, but you really need a 4-wheel drive to negotiate that out because it's so bad.
You could always try Watt Road.
So there's a massive tractor.
I did try going down St Peter's Road and then up St Wilfrid's, but in fact, if you go up St Wilfrid's and try to turn right, there's a real problem because there are parked cars on your left, which means you have to be on the wrong side of the road. If anything comes around the corner, it's going to hit you. And you can't really see to your right without pulling out anyway, because there's a stopping road hedge. I have to say that I was thinking that maybe the council should make some representations to NNC about some yellow lines, because it is actually a real hazard with cars parked right up to the junction, St Wilfrid's. And until relatively recently, there was a sort of giant pothole as you came up St Peter's Road, and then the road takes it to a 90-degree turn up at the top end before it joins up to Burnley Road. And right on that corner, there was a terrible pothole that if you hit it, was in danger of wrecking your entire suspension. But before I could even get to Street Doctor, because I was just fed up with it, somebody went in and filled it in the other day, so thank you for that. Anyway, that was a bit of a diversion. Councillor Davies.
Nothing, thank you.
Anything else?
I just wondered on one thing, the plan application from the Berries, is there any news on that?
The
The one basically where
on
I
Blackthorn Road.
No.
As in no, nothing.
Nothing?
Sure.
No, just living on New Road, Lisa and I know it's a bit interesting, isn't it? And just on a story like that, a massive tractor, one of them really big ones with a huge trailer, completely ignored all the road close signs, got right up to it and had to reverse around Rock Road.
I just have one thing to say. I don't know whether anybody else has noticed it. The Town and Country estate agents has closed.
Where's that one?
Right there.
In the old town hall.
Really?
Right.
Well,
It's moved its operation to Uppingham. There was just a sign. Rebecca noticed they were taking all the signage down yesterday, so I went in there and took a picture of the notice on the door that says we've closed business here and we've relocated to Uppingham, but we'll still be serving Oundle and surrounding villages.
There were so many houses on there.
So it'd be interesting to see what comes in there. I mean, it's a prime location, but I don't really think that estate agents, when we're relatively well served for the
We've
next
just got
It was good as a building society.
Next, yes, a bank or a building society
Fine.
would be great.
What about a banking pub in
I
there?
think that would be
Yeah.
excellent.
It's one good idea.
Be true.
Because if we
Oh,
still
banking
own
pub. I
that
thought you said
building,
banking
the
pub.
possible
Sorry?
things-
I thought you said a banking pub. I was going to
No.
say, how does that work?
Banking pub might be
Be a
a
wide-
more interesting conversation.
office.
Yeah, I wish we still owned that building.
I do.
The potential that we could use it for is
Mm.
important. The other thing is that, of course, when the whole thing came up for sale, even though I think we had indicated an interest, nobody actually bothered coming to speak to us about it.
They didn't, we were completely
It's
snobs.
the same thing actually happened with the new road garages.
Yeah.
Where they had evinced an interest in buying them, because we could have used it to extend the recreation ground.
Yeah.
And the next thing we know, they're sold, and the gentleman who bought it came to talk to us in last month.
And wants a skinny building.
And wants to put in a building. And we'll deal with that application. in a minute. Right, it's just gone quarter to 9. Past 9, roll declare the meeting closed. Missed you all very much, haven't you?